Chapter 24. All was ready. The Springhawk and Greyshrike were in position. Their crews and personnel were as prepared as Thrawn and Samacro and Apros could make them. And in the end, Samacro thought with a vague sense of gathering doom, it was all going to come down to the actions of 14 of those officers and warriors. 14. All of them were from the Springhawk, not from any partiality or seniority, but by simple necessity. As the two warships raced to reach the Agbui planet ahead of the 3 incoming family task forces, and as a result, spent as much time in hyperspace as their Skywalkers could handle, the Springhawk's officers and warriors were the only ones who could easily access the Wadith freighter strapped to the cruiser's underside. 14. Lakinda had told them the Zodlak force consisted of a frigate and light cruiser. Even if she could pull her punches without her senior officers noticing and calling her on it, it was still questionable whether the Springhawk and Greyshrike could stand up to them. The fact that 2 more family forces were also on the way tilted the odds even further. Only now it was no longer just the 2 cruisers in the calculation. Now, there were also the 14 remote-controlled gunboats salvaged from the Wadith attack. Samacro didn't especially like Thrawn's plan. Neither did Apros, and Senior Captain Lakinda hadn't sounded very enthusiastic about it either. But Samacro had thought long and hard over the past couple of days, and he'd been unable to come up with anything better. And so now here he was, pacing slowly up and down the narrow aisle between the 20 remote control consoles in the Wadith freighter, putting the 14 men and women through yet another hour of practice, drills and simulated combat, making sure they were as prepared for what was to come as they could possibly be. Mid-Captain Samacro? Samacro paused. Lachnam, seated halfway down the aisle, was looking toward him. The plasma sphere specialist's hand was half raised, and his expression was troubled. "A question, Lieutenant Commander?" Samacro asked as he walked over to him. "Yes, sir," Lachnam said. He paused, waiting until Samacro was standing over him. "I understand the reasons for this, sir," he said, lowering his voice. "I understand that I'm under orders." "You volunteered for this job, did you not?" Samacro asked. "Yes, sir, I did," Lachnam said. "But Senior Captain Thrawn is my commander. I consider a request from him, even if it's for volunteers, to be the same thing as an order." "I see," Samacro said. That was exactly the kind of attitude of loyalty, commitment, and obedience the fleet liked to see in their officers and warriors. "What's your question?" He saw Lachnam's throat work. "Sir, I'm being asked to fire on my own family's ships." "Yes, you are," Samacro agreed, "and you know the reason for that. You and the other Zodlak on this team are the ones most familiar with your ship's weaponry and defenses." "Yes, sir, and I understand that." He hesitated again. "Here's my problem, sir. The Zodlak are allies of the Arizi. Senior Captain Thrawn is of the Myth, rivals of the Arizi. I'm wondering, do you think could there be a political aspect to this?" "An excellent question," Samacro agreed. "Let me give you a simple answer. No." Lachnam frowned. "No, sir?" "No," Samacro repeated. "I understand your concern, especially under the circumstances. But the truth is—" He paused, looking down the aisle at the other men and women working busily on their drills. "The truth, Lachnam, is that I've been Thrawn's first officer since he came aboard. I've watched him in battles, in preparation for battles, in the aftermath of battles, and dealing with aristocra and senior officers." He looked back at Lachnam. "And I have never seen anyone as utterly incompetent at politics as he is." For a moment Lachnam just frowned up at him. Then slowly the frown relaxed. "You're saying, sir, that Senior Captain Thrawn isn't playing politics here?" "I'm saying," Samacro corrected, "that Senior Captain Thrawn never plays politics because he doesn't know how to play politics." He took a deep breath, huffed it out. "Bottom line, when Thrawn comes up with a plan, it's strictly military, nothing more, nothing less." "Yes, sir," Lachnam said, "I understand." "And this is a good plan," Samacro added. "It'll work, and it'll work well." He inclined his head. "And now I believe you have some drills to run?" "Yes, sir, I do," Lachnam said. "Thank you, sir." He gave Samacro a brisk nod and turned back to his console. For another moment Samacro watched over Lachnam's shoulder as he jumped back into his part of the simulation, and realized to his mild surprise that his pep talk had worked better than he'd expected. Not only had he convinced Lachnam that Thrawn's plan would succeed, he'd actually convinced himself. but only if these 14 men and women did their job. Stepping away from Lacknam's console, he resumed his slow walk down the aisle, watching each of them in turn, ready to offer advice or correction or encouragement. Because, really, a plan was only as good as the people executing it. And Samacro had no intention of letting these 14 fail because of him. The star flares faded into stars, and the midsummer had arrived. "Sensors, full scan," Lakinda ordered, doing a quick visual through the viewport. Time to see if shaving a few hours off their journey had paid off. "Combat range clear, Senior Captain," the sensor officer reported. "Mid-range clear, far range clear." "Acknowledged," Lakinda said, breathing a little easier. The extra work had indeed paid off. Just as she'd hoped, the Sodlak ships had beaten the other two families here. "Continue scan, Helm, take us in." From his position beside Lakinda's command chair, the first officer cleared his throat. "I believe, Senior Captain, that Counselor Lakoviv said you were to announce our mission at this point." "Yes, first he did," Lakinda said, looking casually at the tactical display. It was still filling in as the sensors continued to collect data, but so far there was nothing out there. It was reported to Counselor Lakoviv that this planet may be home to one or more mines and rare ore deposits. Our mission is to locate those mines and assess their value. "To assess a mining operation?" First asked, staring at her. "Forgive me, Senior Captain, but that strikes me as not only flimsy, but also ludicrous." "I'm just telling you what Senior Aide Lakjeep told me," Lakinda said, meeting and holding his gaze. "I don't believe it," First said flatly. "No Patriel would haul in family members from all over the Ascendancy for something that trivial." "Or activate a frigate and cruiser to bring us all here," the second officer added, his face just as suspicious as First's. "There has to be more to it than that, Senior Captain." "And we want to know what it is, ma'am," First said. "All of it." "Or," Lakinda asked, layering some ice beneath her calmness, "Thrawn had said the Springhawk would be waiting for them. Where was he?" First didn't even twitch. "You're the commander, Senior Captain," he said with the same icy calmness. "You can refuse to tell us, but if you do, there will be consequences down the line." "Are you threatening me First?" Lakinda asked, still keeping her tone calm. "If Thrawn didn't get in here fast, not at all, ma'am." He drew himself up. "But bear in mind that while I may be only a junior captain, I am Sodlak blood." "So noted," Lakinda said, her heart sinking a little. In the fleet, such distinctions in family rank were meaningless, but at this time and place they weren't Ascendancy officers. This was a Sodlak operation, and First status meant he would have receptive ears in the Patriarch's office that would be closed to Lakinda. If this whole thing turned belly up, "Contact!" Sensors spoke up sharply. Fortunately, they hadn't jumped in right on top of each other. Or on top of the Midsummer and Apogee, either. Possibly by design. Along with providing the planetary coordinates, the Agbui on Selwys had presumably assisted Lakoviv's people in mapping out the jump-by-jump pattern that the Sodlak ships had followed, which had partially defined which part of space they'd arrived in. Maybe Haplif's accomplices in this con game had done the same for the other two families' ships, making sure they arrived slightly separated from each other. Not only would that avoid potential snarls, but it would give everyone time to realize they weren't the only ones going for the prize, and perhaps decide just how hard they were going to fight for it. "Do we have IDs on them?" First asked. "Configuration marks them as Chiss," Sensors said, frowning at his displays. "But, Senior Captain, I'm getting transmissions," Com cut in. "The ships," she touched a key, "is Expeditionary Force Alpha." A haughty voice came over the bridge speaker. "I'm serving formal notice that we are claiming this world and all its resources for the Aragal family of the Chiss Ascendancy." "Unacceptable, Aragal Task Force," a new voice came, just as haughty as the first, and this one carrying an edge of anger. "Kindly identify yourself and your ships." "I am Force Alpha, operating under the auspices of the Aragal family," the Alpha commander said in an even, precise voice. "That's all you need to know." "Is it now?" the second voice bit out. "Fine. Be aware that I am also a military task force, traveling under the auspices of the Pomerio family, and I formally challenge your claim." "What is this?" First growled. "Senior Captain, what's going on here?" "I already told you," Lakinda said. She tapped her comm key. This is Task Force Sodlak, she called, since we all seem reluctant to give our actual names. Names are irrelevant, the Aragal said. All that matters is that the Aragal now own this world. The Pomrio challenged that claim, the Pomrio commander repeated. Lakinda looked at her first officer. He was staring out the viewport, his face rigid, his eyes blazing. He still didn't know what was down there, but he now knew that 2 other families badly wanted it. And that was suddenly all that mattered. He was Sodlak blood, and he would be damned if he would let the Aragal or Pomrio take something he already considered to be his. Whatever it took, whether threats or demands, combat or death, the planet and its mines were going to belong to the Sodlak. And with a sinking heart, Lakinda realized Apros and Thrawn had been right. There was going to be a battle today, and when the dust settled, the Ascendancy could very well be balanced on the edge of civil war. Only she and Thrawn stood in the way of that disaster. In the meantime, she had a role to play out. The Sodlak challenge both your claims, she said. I'll also point out that we were here before either of you. Who was here first is irrelevant, the Aragal said. All that matters is who is here last. Beside Lakinda, the first officer made a rumbling sound in his throat. Senior Captain, I recommend we go to full combat stations. Agreed, Lakinda said, keying the ship-wide alert. How are you at a weapons console? I spent over a year at one. Excellent, Lakinda said. Take that station and ready your weapons. Yes, ma'am. He headed briskly across the bridge. New contact, Senior Captain, sensors called, just coming around the curve of the planet. Wonderful, First growled over his shoulder. Which family is it now? No family, sir, sensors said. It's the Springhawk. He half turned to look at Lakinda. And they're in trouble. There they are, Dalvu's voice came over the speaker in the Watith freighter's control room. Got the Zodlak ships. There are the Aragal, and there on the far starboard are the Pomrio. Looks like everyone's here, Senior Captain. Very good, Mid-Commander, Thrawn's voice came. Mid-Captain Samacro, are you ready? We're ready, sir, Samacro said. Officers and warriors, go. There were nods and muttered acknowledgments up and down the aisle as the 14 men and women activated their gunboats. Make it look good, Thrawn reminded them. Remember, the Springhawk is in serious trouble. Samacro looked over at the repeater displays that had been set up above the forward hatch. Thrawn was putting on an amazingly realistic show. He saw, with the Springhawk squirming back and forth as it tried to shake away the gunboats swarming around it and throw off the freighter attached to its underside. The repeaters didn't show it, but Samacro knew the cruiser's lights and power levels were also flickering, its thrusters firing only intermittently, and its electrostatic barrier completely gone. As far as any of the family ships out there could tell, the Springhawk was going down fast. Only now, with their sudden arrival, it had been given a reprieve. Shifting his gaze to the tactical, Samacro saw the 14 gunboats that had supposedly been harassing the cruiser abandon their formation and accelerate toward the newcomers. And family commanders who'd been ramping up for a squabble among themselves were suddenly facing an unexpected challenge. A very serious challenge, too. Dalvu had the profiles up now, and adding in the 2 Sodlak ships, the total count came to 1 frigate, 2 light cruisers, and 5 patrol ships. With 14 gunboats bearing down on them, the smart move would be for them to escape back into hyperspace and come back when they had more firepower. But they wouldn't. The lure of the imaginary Nyx mine was too strong, the risk to family honor and prestige too great. Maybe the last remaining ship would run, if it was still able to do so. But until then, they would all stand and fight, which was, after all, exactly what Thrawn was counting on. Incoming Senior Captain, sensors announced, his voice tight. I make it 14 fighter-class warships, probably gunboats. Acknowledged, sensors, Lakinda said. Aragal and Pomrio ships, I strongly recommend you get out while you still can. If these gunboats were able to bring a Chiss-heavy cruiser to the edge, they're way more than either of you can handle. Negative on that, Sodlak, the Aragal commander growled. We're not leaving. Not with an expansionary defense fleet ship and crew in danger, the Pomrio added. If we leave now, they'll just go back and finish off the Springhawk. Lakinda breathed a silent sigh of relief. She'd been pretty sure they wouldn't run, but there'd always been that chance. More important, Their oaths to the Ascendancy were starting to push against their loyalties to their families. "As you will," she said. "In that case, we need to put together a joint battlefront, anchored by my frigate and our 2 cruisers. Aragal, you're currently in the middle, so the Pomerio ships and I will move in and form up on you." She gestured to the pilot. "Helm, get us over there. Apogee, stay on our flank until we reach the Aragal." "Just a moment, Sodlak," the Aragal said. "I agree on a joint battlefront. I don't necessarily agree that you should be in command." "I have the frigate," Lakinda reminded him. "More important, I'm a senior captain. Your rank?" There was a pause. "Mid-captain," he said reluctantly. "Pomerio?" Lakinda prompted. "Also mid-captain," the other replied. "Very well, Sodlak, the Pomerio cede command to you. But be warned, if I see you slanting this operation to favor your family over ours, I reserve the right to withdraw my support in my ships." "As do I," the Aragal said. "So noted," Lakinda said. "Let's focus on rescuing the Springhawk and keeping ourselves alive, shall we?" "All right, we'll start with a modified double-wing formation. Frigate in the center, Zodlak cruiser to starboard, Pomerio cruiser to port side. Patrol ships fill in the wings, staying far enough back to be partially shielded, far enough forward to deliver laser fire. Once the gunboats split their attack formation, you'll all be largely on your own, but I suggest the patrol ships stay close to one of the larger warships. Questions?" "No, Senior Captain," the Pomerio said. "Repositioning my ships and awaiting your arrival," the Aragal added. "And don't dawdle. Those gunboats are moving up fast." "Acknowledged," Lakinda said. "Helm, boost our speed 15%. First?" "Weapons crews running pre-combat checks." First reported from the weapons console. "We'll be ready once they open fire." Lakinda felt her lip twist. Once they open fire. Even here, facing a clear and present threat, the rules against preemptive strikes persisted. "Good," she said. "Midsummer officers and warriors, prepare for battle." "This is it," Samacro said, gazing at the Springhawk's tactical repeater as he strode down the control room aisle. The 8 family ships had finished gathering into a modified double wing, and their formation was poised to meet the incoming gunboats. Fortunately, from the transmissions the Springhawk had been able to eavesdrop on, it looked like Lakinda was in overall command. The plan would probably still work if one of the other commanders had claimed that position, but it might have made things trickier. "Remember your orders," he added, pausing behind Lacknam's station. "And watch yourselves. We don't want this ending too quickly." He leaned over Lacknam's shoulder. "You ready, Lieutenant Commander?" he asked softly. "Yes, sir," Lacknam said. "Good," Samacro said. Whatever the young man's uncertainties had been about firing on his own family's ships, he'd apparently been able to put them aside. "First shot coming up. Make it count." Lacknam nodded. The gunboats reached firing distance. Ahead, in nearly perfect unison, the wall of gunboats erupted with laser fire. 3 hits, sensors snapped. Ventral bow, dorsal port side, ventral port side. "Weapons, open fire," Lakinda ordered. "Target the ones that shot at us. Damage? Barrier down 20%, sensors reported as the Midsummer's lasers opened fire, raking across the gunboats. Targeting sensors 1 and 5 down 20%, switching to manual targeting to compensate. No nodes hit, weapons clusters undamaged." "Acknowledged," Lakinda said, feeling some of her tension draining away. Samacro had done it. He and his team of gunboat controllers were actually making this look real. "Weapons?" 2 hits, first reported. 1 on dorsal bow, no clear damage indicated. Second, a possible kill shot on portside laser. The starscape ahead of them had become a blaze of laser fire as the gunboats and Chiss warships dueled. The gunboats delivered one final salvo and then broke off, their intertwined attack formation suddenly blossoming outward. "Watch it, they're shifting to single combat." Lakinda warned. "Patrol ships, stay sheltered as best you can." "Belay that, Force Alpha," the Aragal commander cut in. "The Aragal do not hide like children, engage at will, and engage fully. Nor do the Pomerio abandon others to fight in their stead," the Pomerio commander added. "Patrol ships, form up on my flanks." Lakinda grimaced, but she should have expected that. Capturing the Neox mines might not be as important as it was an hour ago, but maintaining family honor was always a priority, and practically speaking, once a battle devolved into one-on-one, it really was every ship for itself. She should be happy the tentative alliance had lasted this long. "As you wish," she said to the other commanders. But stay together, guard one another's backs, and set up kill shots wherever you can. Set up shots among our own ships, or with the others? First asked pointedly. Family first. The words whispered through Lakinda's mind. Words that had been with her since childhood. Words that had colored every thought and been a background to every decision. Words that had become even more important after she was raised with whichever damn ship is in position, Lakinda said tartly. Just remember that we're all Chiss. Sodlak, Aragal, Pomrio, we're all Chiss. So we are, the Pomrio said with quiet menace. Let us make these aliens very sorry they ever crossed our path. Multiple hits on family ships, Dalvu reported. Minor hull damage on 2 of the Aragal patrol ships. Minor hull damage and 1 laser inoperative on Pomrio cruiser. Targeting sensors inoperative on Sodlak and Pomrio cruisers and all 3 Aragal patrol ships. Reduction in barrier strength on all vessels. No other damage detected. Samakro exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Well done, he called to the 14 men and women at their control consoles. Open up your formation. Time to go to one-on-one. He touched Laknim on the shoulder. And that, he reminded the other, is why you're all shooting at your own family's ships. Yes, sir, Laknim said, sounding marginally calmer. Samakro focused on Laknim's displays, watching the starscape twist violently as he maneuvered his gunboat around and between the answering laser blasts. This aspect had been just one more point of genius in Thrawn's plan. Because each family's warships had their own set of unique differences, specifications, and peculiarities, and each family made a point of training its fleet warriors in those details. That meant that those warriors, and only those warriors, knew how and where to attack their family's ships with a maximum of ferocity and a minimum of actual damage. The battle raged on. The gunboats continued to swarm the Chiss warships, firing madly and as ineffectively as possible, focusing on targeting sensors and empty sections of hull. Their opponents, with no such restrictions to slow them down, fired back with lasers and occasional breachers, steadily grinding away at their attackers' numbers. As each gunboat was destroyed, its control panel went dark, and its operator was finished. They all reacted differently to that endpoint, Samakro noted, some clenching their fists in frustration, others just slumping back in their seats in relief. Others making tension-relieving small talk with neighbors who had similarly been idled. The number of gunboats dropped to 11, then 9, then 8. Senior Captain, we have a tight beam transmission from the Midsummer, Brishk suddenly said over the speaker.